Okay, ho 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 bitches, let's get into it. I'm scrolling TikTok at 3 a.m. because my nervous system's too fucked to go to sleep and I feel too anxious to put my phone down. Is that why I'm having an existential crisis? There are always going to be a million other things you could have decided to do. I'm broken. It's Podmas Day 6. Right, let's get comfortable. Day 6, can you believe it? Impressed with myself that I'm still doing this. Honestly, the hardest part of Podmas, has been figuring out when to wash my hair. That is why my fringe is pinned back today. One, because my hair is so greasy and I don't know when to wash it. I'm probably going to have to watch it tonight. 2, because I had a TikTok go a bit, it's not viral, but a TikTok found the wrong side of TikTok. And by the wrong side of TikTok, I mean it found men on TikTok. And as you would imagine, when men don't really have a comeback, but they feel outraged at something you've said, the go-to is insulting your appearance. And I had multiple men insult my fringe. I had someone say, girls will spend £40 on a fringe that doesn't even match, that doesn't even meet in the middle. Sir, I don't want my fringe to be a full fringe. This is what it's supposed to be like. Did I get insecure and pin my fringe back today? No, I actually didn't. It is genuinely because it's just dirty. But anyway, I think maybe that's what's prompted the topic that we're about to talk about, because we've had some fun interactions with men over the past few days. I posted a TikTok. I thought about doing a full episode of this, and I'd probably do a full episode on the topic of this, but I posted a TikTok about the differences in the way women's hobbies and men's hobbies are treated. Men will buy season tickets to football teams and they will go every single weekend to watch these football games. Every single weekend. They will wear t-shirts, hats, scarves with those football players on their football games. They will chant. They will sit at home and watch on TV. They will search up the players and the formations of which players are playing and which are being transferred and which are being sold for certain amounts. They will be so obsessed with these football games, and that's kind of seen as completely normal. The kind of like, oh, don't bother dad, he's watching his football on a Sunday. And it's so accepted that men are so into these sports games. Women and Taylor Swift, they want to go to a few concerts, all of a sudden they're crazy and obsessed because they like Taylor Swift. When men are obsessed with things, it's just, oh, he's really passionate. When women are obsessed with things, it's kind of like insane and crazy. The Grinch would never do that. The men did not like this. The football men did not appreciate this at all, and they came out in their droves. They came out from behind their laptops. They came out from their mum's basements in their droves to attack me. Fortunately, what was amazing about it is I was telling my sister and she was like, oh my God, are you okay? And what was amazing is I responded to some comments. The girls in the comments had my freaking back. Like, I was just doing my thing this weekend. So I went out for dinner with my dad, saw my mum, everything. Was just doing lots of Christmassy things. So I wasn't really on my phone, went to the Christmas market, things like that. Came back. I didn't have to defend myself. I didn't have to affirm or explain the points I was making because the girls in the comments were doing it for me. The way that you guys rallied to support me and to back the point that I was making, love you. I also, this weekend, let's just have a little chat. Somebody commented on the first day of Podmas and they said, loved the intro, bit slow at the beginning though, got a bit bored. Maybe you should speed up the pace and say the important things first. And this morning I was reading that and I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should love a bit of constructive feedback. And if that's actually how you feel as a viewer, maybe I should speed things up. Then I was like, okay, what vibe do I want to bring to the podcast? What do we want this to be? That's what this Podmas is about. It's about connecting with you guys and finding what I want this podcast to be like. And I don't want it to be those snappy, quick YouTube videos, that are 5 ways to make $500 million in 3 hours. And just the really quick episodes. I think they're great and I love some YouTube videos like that. But I want this to be I want this to be like a women's circle. I've told you this before. I want it to be a women's circle. I want it to be like a gathering of us. And when I go to a women's circle or when I meet up with my girls, I don't want to get into the deep depth straight away. I need to lube up first, I want a bit of foreplay before you fucking shove it in there. And so I am going to chat at the beginning of this podcast. I was thinking, do I keep doing the check-ins? Are people going to be bored of the check-ins in the beginning? Do I do them at the end? Let me know what you think. If you've listened to the first few episodes of Podmas, what do you think of the check-ins? Do you think they make sense at the beginning? Do you think I should put them at the end? Do you think I should just get rid of them and just be a people pleaser and not talk at all at the beginning of my episodes? Let me know. But until you let me know, I'm going to tell you, I I'm watching Squid Games at the moment, and I've watched every episode that is up, so just waiting for the final now.
Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. If you're watching Squid Games and you haven't got to the final episode yet, I'm about to spoil a lot of stuff, and I had absolutely no consideration of your feelings and the fact that you might not want it spoiled. So if you have not watched it and you don't want it spoiled and you don't want to discuss it, move along.
I just had to bring attention. I'm not going to talk about Squid Games too much. There's not much to say on it, I don't think, apart from the fact that it's great. And if you haven't watched it, you should. It's so entertaining. I loved so much. I can't remember the number of this guy. When they were doing, what challenge was it? It was before challenge 5. They had this like enormous elimination and they had to pick someone who they wanted to keep safe. And the last 11 people who were not picked were going to be eliminated. It was basically like PE. They basically lined everyone up and were like, okay, you have to pick someone that you want to keep safe. Then that person picked someone they wanted to keep safe. And the last 11 people at the end got eliminated. It was so, I think if you'd had PE trauma, if you were not like a sporty kid at school and you were one of the ones that picked last, that is the kind of situation that you get put in, that you are just like, I am in living hell, eliminate me now, like I cannot be a part of this. But the girls basically formed a girl power alliance. That's what they were calling it. They were like hashtag girl power. And they were basically like, we're gonna pick each other. Like the girls have to stick together no matter what, the girls pick the girls. And so the girls started picking the girls, and then one girl picked a guy, and it was fair enough. Like she was really, really good friends with this guy. He was like her best friend from day one. And she was like, I'm gonna pick him in the hope that he supports the alliance and picks another girl. So she picks him, and everyone's like, no, oh my God. In their minds, and the audience, you know, we're like, fuck, girl power, like you've ruined the alliance. This guy comes up and you're fully expecting him to just like start picking the guys again. He's like, I see what you are trying to do here. I respect representation. And he picks the girls. I was fucking crying. These are the men that we need. Where are these men on TikTok? Okay, because I need those men. I found the football bros that hate women and want us dead. Where are these nice men? Where are the men that respect gender representation? We need them. I loved him so much. He actually got out. Spoiler. Okay, should we do a quick check-in question before we get started on the topic, which it seems like we have already kind of stumbled upon this morning just through talking about Squid Games and girl power and TikTok. So I guess that's just kind of the elephant in the room all of the time. Do you ever have a day where you don't think about gender inequality or misogyny? Or are you a man? I feel like men do. Oh, okay. Check-in question for today. Where are your insecurities currently holding you back? Where are your insecurities currently holding you back? Where are my insecurities currently holding me back? I do feel like maybe this is just because we're talking about this topic and because being on the podcast, I can put that down, and because podcasting at the moment is such a big part of my life because I'm doing it every day and everything I'm doing is kind of centered around putting out this podcast and wanting it to be good and being online and all of these things. I think an insecurity I currently have, which is perfectly in keeping with this topic, is, am I good enough to be doing this? Like, do I need to be more? Do I need to be more educated, or do I need to be more interesting? Is what I'm doing good enough? Do I stand out? Like, am I important enough or intelligent enough or smart enough or whatever enough? Am I enough to do this and do this online thing? And I think because that is an insecurity that I hold, I'm maybe not putting in 100% of myself. Maybe I'm holding back, or maybe I'm not treating it like the opportunity that could literally change my life. Maybe I'm not treating it like a career. Maybe I'm not treating it like the biggest, most important project of my life, because I think maybe somewhere deep down, I don't yet believe that this can be the big thing that actually takes off and it actually works. So I think maybe that insecurity is holding me back. And deciding to do Podmas was a huge part of recognizing that as an insecurity and recognizing that the fact that that insecurity is holding me back. Choosing to do Podmas and put out content every single day was intentional, in the hopes that by doing it every single day, I can override those insecurities, or not override the insecurities because the insecurities will still be there. Override the way that insecurity holds me back, I hope. And with that perfectly in mind, do you know who is not sitting around wondering if they're good enough to do the thing that they want to do. White men. If you haven't heard, people, and actually it's not just men, it's actually a lot of women as well. So we're just going to say people in general. I know normally it's very, very much let's hate on the men club. And normally these types of things are led by men, but this time is actually not. People on the internet are back and hating on women again. The next victim of this is not me, although it kind of is me if you looked at my latest TikTok and scrolled through the comments. It's an absolute cesspit. It is the pits. But it's not me. We're not here to talk about me, even though I know that we do often talk about me. This time, it's Emma Chamberlain. So there is a lot of what the kids are calling discourse at the moment going on about Emma Chamberlain, and more specifically about her podcast. The general reason people are talking about it is because they feel like it is vapid, and they feel like the people of the internet have decided that her podcast is not well-informed, well-educated. It's very basic level information. And that's not good enough. The two main points I've seen are people saying that she's not college educated, and so she probably doesn't have the context and the depth of information to be talking about the topics that she's talking about. And the other thing is that she should possibly not be talking about philosophical or like big life topics on her own in her echo chamber, hence the term echo chamberlain. And basically how because she hasn't gone to college, she spends a lot of time on her own because she's like an influencer and that's her career. She doesn't have the context from living in the world and having conversations and discussions with the wider world and lots of people that give her the kind of context, education and ability to talk on these topics in a meaningful way. What my thought is where are all of these people in the TikToks and the podcasts created by 19-year-old boys talking about mindset and how you can change your life? I, unfortunately, as embarrassing as it may be to admit, do love a bit of self-help content. I love self-help. I love self-development stuff. I love psychology stuff, even though it is, for some reason, very embarrassing to admit, I think. And it's becoming more and more embarrassing for me that I love self-help and bettering myself. I get a lot of that content on my For You page. And you wouldn't believe, if you are not in that world, how much self-help, motivational, mindset, psychology content is made by teenage boys. Literal teenage boys. And never have I ever in my long-legged life seen a long-legged sailor with a long-legged wife. Where is that from? Where did that come from? I have no idea. What I was actually going to say is, never have I ever seen a comment that says, whoa, this bro needs to go back to school. This guy doesn't have a college degree. Is this guy educated enough to talk on this topic? Does he exist in an echo chamber, or does he have the context from the wider world to talk on these topics? Nobody is saying this about young men's content, but for some reason, people have centered in on this young woman's content and decided that it is not good enough, that she does not have a college background, does not have wider contextual education, regardless of the fact that that is not how she markets her podcast. She does not deem her podcast to be a super educational podcast. Yes, she talks about, and look, I'll be the first one to admit, I don't listen to her podcast. I've listened to episodes, but I wouldn't say I was a listener of her podcast. Maybe I'm a little bit too old. Maybe I do, because I consume, like, the episodes I have listened to. I would agree with some of the comments, the neutral comments, about the fact that a lot of it, or some of the stuff that I've listened to, is quite basic level psychology, human behavior, philosophy. She is also a young woman in her early 20s discovering all of this, who just happens to have a microphone and an audience. So I, at 19, discovered meditation and like philosophy and started discovering human behavior and like Jungian psychology. As I kind of developed through my early 20s, I did start to learn about these things and find it really interesting and talk about it and try to apply it. And I think that's just very normal, and she just happens to be talking about it on a podcast. But for some reason, people have decided that that is not good enough. Like, she's just growing up, and I think lots of people gain the interest and knowledge of human behavior and human psychology, but apparently it's not good enough and she's not allowed to talk about it. Do you know who didn't go to college? Mr. Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett. He was a college dropout, and he has one of the most successful podcasts in the world right now, I would imagine, based on the charts. A very, very branded as an educational, self-help, self-development podcast. He doesn't have a college degree. Nobody's saying that he doesn't have the knowledge or the understanding to have this type of podcast. Nobody's saying he needs to go back to college to get a further education to be able to speak on the topics that he speaks about. And I just think it's interesting. You can connect the dots, but I think it's very interesting that nobody is saying that about him. But as soon as Emma Chamberlain wants to discuss human psychology, human behavior, philosophy, new ideas that she is learning, not from a space of this is me and I'm telling you what's right and I'm going to educate you, just discussing it, all of a sudden, she's getting all of this backlash. And I think just because you don't like something, like, you don't have to like her podcast. Like I said, I'm not an avid listener of her podcast, but just because you don't like it, it doesn't mean you have to vilify the creator just because you don't like something. And I guess it's about expectation. And I think women are just held to a higher regard and they have higher expectations on them. Even if you don't like something, it comes back to the TikTok I made about Taylor Swift versus football. Just because you don't like Taylor Swift, it doesn't mean you have to vilify her. I just think women are held to a higher standard and women just have to be more to be seen as the same. I mean, Alexa, play The Man by Taylor Swift. Alexa, stop playing music. Alexa started playing it. But if I was out flashing my dollars, I'd be a bitch, not a baller. The expectations on women to be more, just to be treated the same, are very, very clear to me. Women are just held to a higher standard. The Queen herself, Alex Cooper, Call Her Daddy podcast, she recently went on Jimmy Fallon. They posted a video of it on their Instagram, and the comments were just as bad as you would imagine. Half the comments were, who is this? Who even is Alex Cooper? Why is this girl on the show? Like, who is this chick? I've never heard of her. You're never going to know everyone who goes on Jimmy Fallon. But if Joe Rogan went on the Jimmy Fallon show, and they're 1-2 in terms of popularity podcasts in the world, okay? So maybe Joe, I don't know who is more well-known, but they're both very well-known. If Joe Rogan went on the Jimmy Fallon show, there is no way on God's green earth that the comments would be filled with people saying, who is this guy? Like, who is he? Why is he on the Jimmy Fallon show? Who is this guy? We don't know him, never heard of him. There's no way the comments would be like that. You see someone on the Jimmy Fallon show, even if you don't know who they are, you just assume, you see their credentials, you see what they do, you see them talk about the person's success, you just assume that they're a successful person and you just don't know who they are. But Alex goes on there and she's very attractive and she's talking about all of her successes. People need to invalidate her existence there. And then the other half of the comments are just tearing her a new arsehole, saying she is vapid and boring and uninteresting and narcissistic, has nothing interesting to say, not dissimilar to the comments that Emma is getting about not having groundbreaking ideas, not being original or saying very surface level things. It's just crazy how many so fucking average male podcasts and male creators, male content there is, and people just aren't holding those men to the same regard as they are people like Emma. It's crazy to me to see this kind of rise and fall, I suppose, of Emma, because she was the internet's golden girl. Up until a few months ago, I swear, people loved her. I couldn't go on TikTok without seeing people putting clips of her podcast with motivational, inspirational pictures in front of it. People loved her. And all of a sudden now she's trying to kind of enter a different space, grow her brand in a different direction, go in a different way. And now she's kind of being vilified for not being groundbreaking and having kind of scholar level information in her podcast. That's not what her show is. It's just wild to me that people don't see the misogyny in this and don't see that we are holding her to such a high level when there are so many guys making shitty content on the internet. There are so many people making shitty content on the internet, okay? I'm probably one of them. In fact, I am definitely one of them. But there are so many guys making exactly the same level of profound content as her, okay? Nobody's saying, and like I would even say, her content isn't like super profound, a lot of it, okay? The stuff that she's saying isn't like psychologist level awareness of the topics that she's talking about. It's not like overly profound and genius. But then when there are men everywhere talking about the most average, basic level psychology and mindset, and the comments are all like, yeah, bro, team boys, like, go off, son, like, this changed my life, this is so profound, hashtag boys club. I don't know if anyone's saying that, but everyone's just like, yeah, the boys. Nobody is putting the expectation on these guys to have this like enormous contextual awareness and be really intelligent and have gone to college and have all of this background. Nobody has the expectation for them to have that. People are just like, oh, it's just his podcast. Like, he's talking about this shit. Maybe he read it in a fucking Gary Vee book. He's just learning self-help and sharing the process. Dan Coe, for example, is very, very popular in the mindset development space. His whole thing is learn in public. His marketing and his like big USP is telling people the way that you become a creator, and the way that he became a creator and an influencer is by learning things in public, learning things and then sharing them, learning things and then sharing them. Not once have I ever seen anyone comment on one of his posts saying, you didn't go to college to learn this, this needs more context, you're not educated enough to teach this. He is openly and actively saying, I taught myself this, and now I'm teaching you, and everyone fucking laps it up. They love what he's saying. But then people like Emma try and talk about things that they're learning, and all of a sudden it is absolutely not good enough. I mean, it literally is just a tale as old as time. Like, women just have to be more, and then when they're more, they're too much. It's just an impossible standard. I do just wonder if it is like the classic like rise and fall of a creator or an influencer. Like, people loved Emma when she was relatable, and she made her YouTube videos, and they were very like, you could relate to them. She was doing very normal things like sitting in her house in bed. Maybe now she's just got to that kind of level of success and fame that people don't like that women get to. People don't like it when women are very, very successful. And so maybe we're just like, it's the classic conditioning of needing to tear her down because she's no longer relatable and likable. Again, nobody expects men to be relatable and likable when they become successful. Nobody's asking Joe Rogan to be relatable. Nobody's asking Elon Musk to be relatable. Imagine that. You would never get a female version of Elon Musk, ever, because women are just held to too much of a high standard. It would just not happen. Granted, maybe he's a bit of an anomaly because I think people do think he's a bit of a tit. And I think people can appreciate that he is kind of insane. People also think he's a genius, and people look up to him, and people, when you talk about like successful entrepreneurship, he is, I suppose, the pinnacle of that. And a woman would never be afforded the level of discretion that he has been afforded. He says and does the most insane things, and people are just like, oh, yeah, well, like, it's Elon Musk. That would never happen if it was a woman. I think that's probably it for now. I actually, in my TikTok, a girl commented saying she was writing her dissertation on the topic of like female hobbies and the way that the interests of men and women and the treatment of men and women. So I might see if I can reach out to her and connect with her, and maybe we can have a discussion on the podcast. I think that'd be really cool. If you got to the end of this episode, let me know what else you think is misogyny in sheep's clothing, something else that people don't really see as misogyny, but to you it like so clearly is, because I think Emma Chamberlain and the treatment of her is just one of those things. I have a fucking laundry list of things that are, and I want to know what yours are. Okay, love you. Thank you for listening to Podmas Day 6. See you tomorrow. Mwah. Hope you're not sick of me yet. Bye.